Hello, my name is Judith Reeve, and I'm very excited to announce the release of my book, The Color Investigations of Robert Henri. And what I'd like to talk about in the video today is Henri's foundational palette. It's called the Full Spectrum Palette. And I begin my book investigating this palette in detail because Henri uses it for his further investigations of various palette designs. So let's get into it. This palette was initiated by a man he knew. His name was H.G. Murata. He was a colorist and oil painter, and he also developed his own set of commercial paints called Margot paints. And what Henri really liked about this schematic of a full spectrum palette is that it begins with three primaries, okay? So in this case, here's my red, my yellow here, and my blue, okay? So Henri builds his palette from three primaries only in order to achieve a sense of harmony and unity, okay? In this case, these are my primaries that I'm using right now. This red is made from permanent madder deep with some cad red vermilion in it. This yellow is made from cadmium lemon with a touch of raw sienna and viridian. And this is indanthrene blue by Winsor Newton, right out of the tube. Now, these are the primaries I've chosen. I've chosen these because they feel balanced to me, and they give me the colors that I use in my own work. Now, one thing that Henri stressed was that you didn't have to follow exactly what he did. He allowed the artist to be in control of his own palette. So you may decide that you want to use cadmium yellow. You may want to use ultramarine blue or cobalt blue. And your red, you may want something like just cadmium red light, okay? And as we mix, you'll see that getting a balanced palette, there's a process that you need to follow, all right? Okay, so I'm going to take my primaries off here for a second. And I want to focus on the top of this palette. Now, I've placed my primaries, red, yellow, blue, along the top. And what you're going to notice is that there are actually 12 colors at the top of this palette. And these 12 colors actually represent 12 intervals in the light spectrum, okay? So between the red and the yellow, I have my red-orange, my orange-yellow, okay? I have 3 intervals between each of the primaries. In this case, between my yellow and my blue, again, I have yellow-green, green, green-blue, and then I'm back to blue again. 3 intervals. And then between my blue and my red, I have 3 intervals of blue-violet, violet, and violet-red. Now this palette is like the color circle, the color wheel. It continues. Once I end here, I come back around and continue on this side, okay? And like I said, it follows the light spectrum. And the reason that Murata and Robert Henri chose this type of palette to be the basis of many other designs was that it has an innate harmony. I'm starting with 3 colors and I'm expanding it to 12 colors. So there's a little bit of every color in every other color throughout the palette. So there's a sense of real harmony. Okay. Now mixing these intervals can be rather difficult in the beginning. And so the first thing you want to do is mix the secondary, which should appear about halfway between the red and the yellow, in this case with orange, and then mix the green, and then mix the violet. Okay, start there in the middle, and then mix to either side. Mix the orange and the yellow together to make the orange yellow. Mix the red and the orange to get the red orange. And you'll see you'll be able to get the intervals more evenly spaced across the palette. So once you mix all the colors, the 12 intervals on the palette, first look and make sure you have a visual sweep across where there's not one color that's standing out too much, and it feels like you can move easily from one color to the next. Secondly, in order to test your mixtures, you need to mix, let's say, your green and your red to make sure that you get some kind of a neutral, okay? Because the complements, such as red and green, blue and orange, violet and yellow, need to neutralize each other. So I'm just trying to get the right balance of my red and green. And then I'm going to add white to it so you can see that it is neutralized. Touch more green in there. Okay. And you should get something that approaches a grayish color. Okay. Some of the neutrals will be slightly warmer than other neutrals, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be a perfect gray, but it has to be entirely neutralized by the complements. You can see that this palette contains some pretty intense colors. And Robert Henri felt that you did not need to use this entire palette for an image. You would make a selection and create a limitation in the colors that you chose. And you would use those limited colors, called a set palette, for a particular painting. Okay, so even though we have the 12 intervals here, we have every single color that's on the palette, Henri would make a choice, create limitation for a particular painting. And that's something I will go into in the book and talk about further.